That was an absolute embarrassment on behalf of the entire Sixer organization. I apologize that we had to witness that. I have 1,000,001 thoughts. First of all, I got, a microphone set up, although you can't really see it because it's a table microphone. And I also got one of those tripod light things, and that's why the lighting is a little bit better. So that helps out a lot. But what an absolute shit show. It's a shit show that quite frankly puts everything into perspective. Yes, everything that occurred through 5 years, you wait for a guy to develop your offensive game, and it never happened, and it was clear that there was no real motivation on his part to develop his offensive game. Be that as it may, we have to put that finally firmly in the rearview mirror. It doesn't do our organization any good to draw over it. It doesn't do us as fans any good to draw over it. And it did not do the players in the locker room any good to draw on it, because that was worse than Boston. That was your worst loss of the year. I just want to make that firmly clear as possible. That was your worst loss of the year. It was a tactical loss. It was an approach loss. Everything. Players and coaching staff, both. It was a total and complete loss. And if I'm able to make another video with regards to if I could show on tape what I saw, I will do that because I saw a lot. But for now, if you trust me and trust my evaluation and trust what I see, I'm going to tell the story of what happened. First of all, in order to totally tell the story, I want to take you pre-game, before the game. What would your thoughts be headed into this matchup? Because that's important, because pre-game score is 0-0. A lot of times when we look back at blowout losses like this, or even blowout wins, you say, would X, Y, or Z made a difference? And your conclusion, logically, is probably not, because you lost by 20 or 30. But before all that happened, remember, the score was 0-0. You still had a chance pre-game to set yourself up preparation-wise to win this basketball game. So, having now said that, pre-game, the 3 games prior to the game tonight, or should I say yesterday, Kevin Durant averaged 33 points and 5 rebounds against the Sixers. And honestly, very specifically and brutally matched up with Tobias Harris. If you remember, even the game that we won, Kevin Durant is chirping at Tobias because he feels disrespected being guarded by Tobias Harris. This is observable. We all saw it as fans in that game back in Brooklyn. We all saw Kevin Durant enjoy that matchup, relish that matchup. It was an easy bucket for him. Now, Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant. He gets buckets on anybody. But there is a thing from a tactical level where if a player sees something, you've got to be, as the coaching staff, you have to say, okay, we're not going to go back into that. We're not going to go into that because that doesn't serve us. Even if it means we have to change the entire defensive alignment, that's okay because Kevin Durant is their main scorer. Kevin Durant, especially now without James Harden, Kevin Durant is the guy that sets up their food. If you don't put the right personnel on Kevin Durant, you're sunk. And the Tobias Harris matchup had been a matchup in hell for Philadelphia. Pre-game, you knew that. You knew that coming in. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers said, Kevin Durant has burned my guy for 3 straight games. Why not make it a 4th? And so there it happened in that first half. Kevin Durant getting shots that he wants, even sometimes shots off the ball, because we all know Tobias Harris has never been one of the more consistent off-ball defenders. So you're going to sleep, you're double teaming when you didn't need to double team. Wide open shots from one of the best shot makers in the league, knock it down. So in the first half, you get burned by the same thing that burned you in the first 3 games. And you're down big due to a lot of factors. We'll get into them. But this is one of the easiest factors. This is my low-hanging fruit. There are other hanging fruits, but this is the lowest hanging one. If you did nothing else, you damn straight could have done this. So for me, coming out of halftime, the TNT reporter was talking about coming out of halftime, what did Doc Rivers say as far as adjustments, and he was like, let's try harder. Now, to be fair, there was a little bit of that. Like I said, the players dogged it. They dogged it all night, and we'll get into the specifics of who dogged it, how they dogged it. But just saying to you guys, quote-unquote, try harder. Doc Rivers is the top pivotal, the same guy. They get these jobs out of reputation, and sometimes they need big game moments. In these moments where talent is equal and strategizing and everything, you really start to see the cracks. Because that was not just a try harder. And I'm not just picking at the coach speak. Because literally you start the third quarter. I mean, you got burned again in the first half. If you couldn't do it pregame, you definitely saw it first half. You started the third quarter with Tobias Harris on Kevin Durant. Now, you ended up switching it a little and finally getting Matisse 5 on it, but it's too late. Midway through the third quarter, you're down 30. So, yeah, it didn't, quote-unquote, make a difference then because it was already too late. It's like putting a wall of a dam when it's already leaked. It's over. And that's what I'm talking about. Pre-game, your coaching preparation to just be willfully ignorant through 3 quarters. 24 minutes of seeing yourself get burned, and then finally it comes to mind, okay, let's try a different defender. So we'll move on, because there were other hanging fruits. James Harden obviously sucked on stat sheet, but I think that the way he sucked was so difficult for a lot of people to comprehend that they got confused by it. And believe me, it was perplexing watching him play basketball this way, because in the first 5 games, James Harden did a nice job of balancing, am I going to drive, am I going to shoot, am I going to pull up, am I going to pass to Embiid, is Embiid going to roll? Oh, and by the way, we did not run, once again, I will get to that, but we did not run many pick and roll. I'll get to what I'm going to get to specifically. There's something about offense with Doc Rivers that is simply unacceptable. But specifically towards James Harden. James Harden, in the first 5 games, it was a balance. Am I going to shoot the 3? Am I going to shoot a mid-range even? Am I going to get to the hole? Am I going to finish? Am I going to focus on finishing? You know, it's to a point where Charles Barkley talked about, again, in those first 5 games, he mentioned you're passing the ball, you're distributing, you're being a playmaker, you're setting up your guys. But then in this game, you know, you're not that guy. You're not looking to set up the table. You're not looking to make plays for your teammates as well as yourself. James Harden made a concerted effort to get fouled. Not to make the bucket, not to put the ball in the rim, and Joel's a little guilty of it too, but to get fouled. Stop it. I know I've said it's a death by 1,000 cuts. When you get to the line like that, you're able to set up your defense, you're able to get other guys in foul trouble. But at the end of the day, we need field goals to drop in. At the end of the day, we need to convert buckets. At the end of the day, what we need is to convert field goals. That's how you win this game. And so when James Harden is doing like this, and that ball is not going up, the ball is literally in his hands as he's trying to weave his arm in. And so some of them have been fouls. To be fair to you, James, yes, some of them should have been fouls. I bet you if they look back, a couple calls should have been fouls. But would 3 or 4 trips to the line, would that have changed the outcome of the game? No. Would it have changed the flow of the game? Maybe. But your approach overall of looking to get fouled as opposed to putting the ball in the hole. I don't mind you driving, but drive to finish. not drive the foul. Two totally different things, and I would discuss it. And quite frankly, and this is another coaching thing, I saw it, the Bears saw it, Doc saw it. Want to know what message could have been sent, before the game turned to 30 points? Bench your guys. Bench them. Unfortunately, Doc Rivers has this, they're my guys. And as a result, Doc doesn't believe in the idea of, okay, they're performing badly. Let's bring in the lunch pail crew. Literally, Paul Reed in 7 minutes, 7 points and 4 rebounds. I would have loved to have seen Paul Reed before the game was decided. That I would have loved to have seen that energy. I would have loved to bring a guy in like that. I would have loved to have brought him in. And I'm going to get to a Paul Reed segment very, very shortly. But the name of the James Harden situation was focusing too much on getting fouls. And the same for John Beat, although he actually drew them. But it's the same thing. You're 5 for 19. At the end of the day, we got to generate these easy buckets. And we got to convert these easy buckets. Convert field goals. And that's the name of the game for both of those guys. Convert in the field. Your free throws are not a substitution for the ball going through the net. That's all. Stop playing for the foul. Play for the game. That's what Kevin Durant and they were able to do. They played for the game. They swung the ball around. They generated open looks. And I'm not saying that they didn't try to generate open looks. I'm saying that for them, the focus was a little bit less on generating open looks and more generating free throws. And, when it works, it works. And when it doesn't, oh my God, just pivot away as soon as possible and get back to converting field goals. So there's that. That was the James Harden segment of this game. Now I'm going to get to what I mentioned 2 minutes ago. I said that there was something regarding Doc Rivers and offense. And it was honestly noticeable in the second Cleveland game when we were at home. And it was noticeable in Cleveland. Why are we down double digits? Why are we trailing at the end of halves? You want me to tell you? Doc Rivers had the cute idea of making Tyrese Maxey what we shall call a first half point guard. Don't ask me. I have no fucking clue. You went to James Harden, John B, best pick-and-roll combination in the league, and they still are, to you're running some form of offense where Tobias Harris sets the screen, Joel sets the screen, and Tyrese Maxey, the one with the ball in his hands in the corner. Why? Doc, why? Answer me that. You had James Harden literally giving you 12 to 13 assists in his sleep. But for the last 3 or 4 ball games, you had the idea that Tyrese Maxey could be a high-court point guard. Why did you trade for James Harden? Why? It makes no sense. Yes, Tyrese Maxey should be your secondary ball handler. The key word there is secondary. It should be James swinging to Tyrese, not Tyrese swinging to James. Because here's the thing. Tyrese Maxey is a great catch-and-shoot weapon. James Harden is not. Traditionally. So when you swing the ball back to James Harden, that was a double whammy that kind of predicated some of those drives. Didn't have much time on the shot clock. Dude, you have your point guard. The hierarchy is set. It's James Harden and nobody else. Stop with the ball in Tyrese's hands in the first quarter. Stop it. It doesn't work. And I hate looking at it in comparison to James Harden. So stop it. That's stupid. It's the reason you were down big to the Knicks, to the Cavs, and to the Nets. It does not work. You did not add more to the playbook. You actually made the playbook worse. Take it out. It doesn't work. And some might say, and in fact it looks like, a part of the play design is to get Tobias Harris going. Who gives a fuck about whether or not Tobias Harris goes? Seriously, I don't care if Tobias Harris goes off. Our center in the middle, Joel Embiid, and our 2 guards, Harden and Maxey, combined for 80 points in that 5-1 stretch. Why do I care whether Tobias Harris scores or not? Yes, I get the contract. Yes, I get that, in the ideal world, he could live up to it. He could be involved. But the truth of the matter is he can't. That's the reality. That's the bottom line reality. And us force feeding Tobias Harris, quite to the contrary of Stephen A. Smith or some of these other mouth beavers, does not put you in a position to win. You should get 7 or less field goals. And more than that, it's the touches. Don't touch the ball unless you shoot it. Enough. Yes, he's overpaid. Yes, he's probably the worst contract in the NBA. You most definitively have to move it. But until they have to learn how to live with it, and the way that you don't live with it is it preventing a screen-high offense just to get Tobias touches. Because Tobias touches, literally, it's the other way around for what Doc said earlier. Tobias Harris touches. Those are touches that Tyrese Maxey doesn't get, that Joel Embiid doesn't get, that James Harden doesn't get. Enough. If that's the reason that Tyrese Maxey is your first quarter point guard, is to get Tobias Harris going, then that's mind-boggling. Because it's Tobias fucking Harris. It's Tobias Harris. It's not anyone big. It's Tobias Harris. Ugh. So between that opening segment of Tyrese Maxey being forced to be a point guard for whatever reason, between James Harden trying to play for fouls as opposed to actually scoring the ball, and Joel Embiid to somewhat of a similar extent. Oh, right, we'll get to this because some fans are finally focusing on noticing this. And what I've said from the beginning. And, I can't really blame them, but it's important right now. Small forward. The Sixers have a small forward problem. And Doc knows it, and to his credit or fairness. You have the Tobias Harris and the Yang lineup. We saw that a little bit in the second half. But Tobias is not a wing. It's just hard for Tobias Harris. He is a weird. It's not like he's fat out of shape, but for some reason he doesn't have a good first step anymore. His first step is completely gone. It's not like he has the strength to bulldoze his way to the rim. It's not as though he could convert those close attempts anyway, as we all know. He went 4 for 5 for 3 today, but 3 rebounds in 28 minutes. I haven't listened to any of my guys' post-game lives, but I think we will all agree that the effort and intensity on that end of the floor was absolutely zero from start to finish. But more damning for me in terms of a roster construction, you cannot start Matisse Thybulle. You can't. Particularly when teams know what to do with it. Teams know when they're saying, Matisse Thybulle can't shoot, and they're like, he can't. And secondly, Matisse Thybulle is not that guy defensively. He's not someone that I could stick on anyone. Primarily because Matisse Thybulle cares about one thing and one thing only: weak side blocks and steals. Thinking Basketball did a breakdown on that, and he wondered, what it truly looks like. I know what it looks like. I know that this is the problem. You can't play defense like that. It's not real good defense. You have to be between the ball and the man. That's the only way you can help off the weak side. It's the only way you can keep the ball in front of you. His weak side blocks or steals, they give him numbers, but they don't tantalizingly affect the outcome of a game. Because you don't have the ability to stop a scorer. All you have the ability to do is to create turnovers. And some blocks, which are absolutely minuscule. It's not like what James Johnson was doing in blocking, maybe hacking James Harden tonight when he's near the rim. It's a completely different thing. It's immaterial. What I need Matisse Thybulle to understand is I would much rather him cut his blocks and steals in half, stay in front of the guy, and allow our weak side defense to be stronger as a result. If you're going to be a defensive starter, you need to be able to stay in front. And if you can't do that, you're not really a defensive starter. All you are is an offensive liability. And then we get to Danny Green, who's much of the same. And you're capped out. Tobias is one of the worst contracts in the league. You're not going to trade Joel Embiid. Hope to God that you truly are able to resign James Harden, because if not, you're really fucked. But You don't need Brad. Do you see now? You don't need another 6'4" guard. You don't need another 6'4" guard. You need a small forward. If we're going to upgrade the starting lineup, if we're still thinking about starting lineup, we also have a bench issue. But if we're going to be thinking about the starting lineup, small forward, someone 6'6" or higher, or even 6'5" with a great wingspan, I don't care. Someone who's tall and long, can grab you a couple of rebounds, can play that kind of defense if it's a defensive player, or if it's an offensive player, someone who can catch, shoot, and drive. You know, the things we want from Tobias that we're not going to ever get. That's what we need! And someone will say, well, there aren't that many on the list. You can find one. Again, we're not looking for a top-of-the-line starter. Probably not possible. But can we go from the total dirt to a middle-of-the-road guy? Will a middle-of-the-road guy want to come here? I think so. I think a middle-of-the-road. I mentioned Will Burden from the Denver Nuggets. Upgrade. Immediate. He's not even that great of a defender, but at least he gives you the offensive versatility of driving, slashing, and shooting. So there you go. And players like that. Because what you don't understand is you're starting Matisse, Bible, and Danny Green, and they suck. They blow. Seriously. So, if you look at a small forward, there's a big issue. Always has been a big issue. The only thing you were able to do, you're able to plug that point guard hole with James Harden. Fine. But you still have a small forward problem. And then there is the bench. Let's close out with that disaster. Daryl, we need more than a spot shooter and Jordan Yang off the bench next year. Can you finally admit that your bench is a fucking problem? You should not be looking at Shake Milton. Oh my God. Shake Milton, the way he handles the ball. Lord, no, stop it. Shake Milton should not be a backup point guard, okay? I say point guard in air quotes because he's not a guard. I would like to think he's a wing, but his shot, look at that, that's so hideous. What the hell happened to his jump shot? I have no idea, but it's not an NBA jumper anymore. Far from it. It's looking like a Bolt Smith disaster. You gotta move up and Shake Milton. Burkan Korkmaz was, I mean, I think the numbers are like 2 for 8. Let me check this out real quick. I'm going to check this out. Three for 8. I'm sorry. 3 for 8. But hey, he got 4 rebounds in 14 minutes. And so, you know, that's nice. It's not to see Burkan getting some rebounds. But that's the thing. 3 for 8, right? You know, obviously his shot is also fucked. So these are your bench players. Shake Milton and Burkan Korkmaz. They're barely on the fringes of an NBA roster at this point. Isaiah Joe, once again, he gets 2 shots. I keep saying that it's hard for me to evaluate Isaiah Joe if you're going to go 0 for 1, 0 for 2, etc. You know, where it's like, why is he not able to get shots off? In the preseason, he was able to get shots off. He was able to get opportunities. Why are we... Is it scheme? Is it play design? Is it that he's too physically weak to get himself open? This is NFL football. I don't get it. Why is it that you're so limited in your shot attempts that I really can't say? But what we can say is when you go 0 for 1, 0 for 2, 0 for this, is that 0 for whatever is still 0 for whatever, even if it's 1 or 2 shots. Now that's extraordinarily unfair, but it is what it is. If that's what I have to evaluate, that's what I have to evaluate. It's stupid, don't get me twisted, but that's what you got. And it's not helping you. Obviously, you only get 2 shots, however, sharpshooter. Now, in the first place, I had Isaiah Joe as an undrafted guy to begin with. I wasn't as high. And quite frankly, the Sixer brass isn't using him at a high clip either. So, what are we looking at here? Well, we're looking at the worst bench in the league. Now, I'm going to give Nash credit. The Brooklyn Net bench, I've said that bench is roughly comparable to what we have. But if you go and you look at their minutes played, James Johnson was able to give you 16 points, 3 for 3 from 3. But generally, look at that bench. Goran Dragic didn't even really play that well. 1 for 6, got you 7 dimes, who cares? But guys like Cam Thomas, Kessler Edwards, etc., no Blake Griffin, and really only 20 minutes for Drummond, they shortened their rotation basically barely to 7 guys because their bench is terrible and everyone knows it, and the Nets fans know it, that their bench is dog shit. That's the reason they've been losing. Those guys who utterly crap the bed because of the KD injury and because of Kyrie in home games, you had to play a lot of these guys bigger minutes who just don't have that ability. Now, mind you, it's still a flaw in the sense that even when they're fully healthy, and maybe Ben will help them with this, is they don't really have a direct point guard. It's not Kyrie Irving. You got that other Kevin Durant tonight. Thank you, Doc Rivers. But generally speaking, that's not really, it's going to drive the guy. Again, 1 for 6, somehow able to get 7 assists. Your defense was flat out terrible. But generally speaking, the Nets don't have a primary creator when I watch their game versus the Bucks and some others. They just don't have that creative guy. But we don't have the defensive personnel to address that. I mean, I didn't like the Jaden Springer pick. I'll be blunt with that. Anyone who's seen my other channel, Superhero 18, anyone who's seen me in chats and the Discords, you all know that I hate it and loathe that pick. But we are at a dire crisis with the Sixer bench. I can't with this. You're going to lose possibly in the first round because of this. I kid you not. This bench is horribly unacceptable. It is the worst bench in the NBA. I need to see a Jaden Springer at this point. Paul Reed gave me a lot of energy. All right, I'm going to touch the Paul Reed thing right now. Before and after the trade immediately, in the 3 games, before, you will take a look at Paul Millsap, Paul Reed came in and he did a pretty good job. Got you 7 rebounds in 2 of the 3 games. And then in the Boston game, that was a blowout, he got you 4 rebounds. Before you went into the Paul Millsap. And I said this, is that Paul Millsap basically hit 2 garbage time threes. Who gives a fuck, Doc? And all of a sudden now Paul Millsap is the backup center. What the fuck? Don't get me wrong. I like the fact that he hit threes in that game. I like the fact that he had energy. But you can't change your backup center just because he hit a couple of threes. And as we learned and as we should have known, at 6'7", Paul Millsap is not a center. Now, one thing I'll touch on is that Derek Bonner was right. Derek Bonner of the 6, his newsletter, go check that out. He was right that DeAndre Jordan pick and roll, you're done. DeAndre can't hedge out. He can't really defend the pick and roll, open shots all day long. And that's just what it is. You literally have a ground center, what am I saying? Basically, you have a guy whose feet are stuck in cement on defense, and you can't guard the pick and roll that way. But what Paul Reed gives you is Paul Reed has a lot of defensive activity. I love Paul Reed. I'm a big Paul Reed guy, and it's unfortunate because of the minutes that he plays and the particular ways he plays defense. I've had literally, and unfortunately, you don't get defensive clips like you get offensive clips. Everyone loves offense. No one loves defense. So, as a result of that, you're not going to get too many defensive clips. But for me, I watch Paul Reed, and I'll tell you what I like about Paul Reed. Paul Reed has the ability to, what the defensive term for this is, blow up screens. If you were a Sixer fan in the early 2010s, back in the playoff run, the Iguodala years, you remember Thaddeus Young did this really well. He blew up screens, meaning that the big man could stand between himself and his man screening the ball, and he would flare out defensively to the ball handler. in effect pressuring the ball handler, allowing you to get back to your man while also getting the ball further away from the perimeter. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed that when Paul Reed blitzes the ball handler has to stand further away? And Doc Rivers talked about, I want rim protection. Hey, Doc, I value what Paul Reed does defensively more than a ground center. A laden foot center. Someone who's too slow and can't react on the blitz. I prefer Paul Reed. I prefer that defensive coverage, Doc. I think it does way more for you in terms of slowing down the offense, in terms of pressuring the basketball, and in terms of protecting the rim too, because of that speed, you can get back to the big man. So I think it does way more for you, and Paul Reed is athletic and can blow up screens than DeAndre Jordan, who is too slow on pick-and-roll defensive coverage. I think it does more for you. Not only do I think it does more for you, I think it demonstratively has done more for you to have a blitzing big man defensively than a quote-unquote pure rim protector. And if you want to go to a pure rim protector, you would still like someone who can, again, be able to at least have the foot speed to react to certain things. So in other words, again, Charles Bassey doesn't quite have that Paul Reed athleticism in terms of, again, point A to point B, but he's damn quicker than DeAndre Jordan. Enough of the 35-year-olds who are past their freaking expiration date. Enough. DeAndre Jordan is not a backup center for a title contender. Paul Millsap is not a backup for a title contender. Enough of the 35-year-olds, Doc, or so I shall forever complain. Stop it. They're not your backup centers. Why did we draft Paul Reed and Charles Bassey? Why did we draft Philip Petrusev? The Sixers invested three second-round picks into a backup center. Remember Tony Bradley the year before. Seriously, it is clear that Daryl Morey in the front office decided to invest picks in young bigs who could develop into a backup role. But now, Doc is like, I need my 35-year-olds. And so it cock blocks it. Remember Mike Scott? Eventually, if you're a big man in the draft, you get drafted by the Sixers. Charles Bassey already did this. I want to short the contract. This is why. Why would any big man want to be drafted by the Sixers, particularly by Doc Rivers, knowing damn straight you don't really get the opportunity to compete for minutes? You can play fundamental defensive basketball like Paul Reed, and your likelihood is do not play, coach's decision. It's fucking ridiculous. These young players aren't getting beat out by players who are better than them. They're getting beat out by players with a fucking birth certificate. Stupid. I can't take it. I can't take it. In part, I like to see young players develop, evolving through the process. But more than that, I think they can help you win ball games because they are able to make the quick defensive reads, quick athletic plays on the ball that DeAndre Jordan can't make because he's too old, or Paul Millsap because he's both old and short. Enough. The likelihood that you have to fire Doc Rivers. That's the likelihood. The likelihood is you're probably going to have to fire Doc. And I'm all for it at this point. Doc Rivers is basically a fancier title for Brett Brown. All the same problems you have with Brett Brown. Substitution patterns. Unable to read the floor. All of it is the same with Doc Rivers. The devil that you didn't know is still the same as the devil that you had. Regular season wins do not mean anything. It is your playoff success. I mean, you look at that Rivers playoff record, especially over the last, 4 years, 6 years, it's 32 and 34? Very fitting. So over the last 6 years, he had been Brett in name and in strategy. Yes, there are future games. Yes, it's one game, etc. And playoffs haven't begun yet. But when you looked at, Reggie Miller was right. You saw things. You didn't have the outside shooting. Your small forward position is shit. Your bench is absolute crap. There are things roster-wise and player-wise you have to fix. But you definitely, it doesn't matter. Let's say, For example, small forward. You don't have that money, you don't have that cap, right? And my thought was bring someone in to compete with small forward. And that someone to compete will likely be a younger player. We all know Doc. Danny Green is 35, trotting out. So Doc Rivers will go with Danny Green, even if you get a young small forward prospect that you could throw in to compete. So even if you do go the young go compete route, you don't have a guarantee that Doc will actually put that player in there. So really, for the long-term interest of the Sixers, if you don't win this, if you have, God forbid, another second-round exit, or even, God forbid, a first-round exit, if the playoffs don't go the way we want, you have to divorce Doc Rivers because it's never going to happen. It's really never going to happen. And the reason it will never happen, is the same reason why Clipper fans were telling us. Doc Rivers does not adjust. Sixer Universe, I'm hoping that this microphone was able to put volume and perspective and things like that. It was starting slow and then it got into a crescendo. The game was awful from start to finish, and it was awful from a competitive standpoint, and it was awful from, in my view, a long-term standpoint. That may have been one loss, but that was a damning, indicting loss on everything you built up to that point. Sixer Universe signing off. Peace.